Welcome to Buddhism Seeds, a place where each teaching is planted like a seed of light quietly blooming into peace, understanding, and awakening within you. All your life you've been told if you want something, try harder, hold on tighter, do more, sacrifice more, endure more. That happiness is the reward for those who never give up, that those who seize opportunities will conquer fate. But if that's true, why does holding on tighter often make you feel more lost? Why are there nights when, despite giving everything you have, you still feel empty, alone, and disconnected from yourself? Why is it that the thing you want to keep the most is the first to slip away, like sand falling through your fingers? Maybe you've forgotten something important. Life does not always respond to your call. It has its own rhythm, its own timing. And some things only come closer when you let go. Not everything needs to be forced. Not everything has to be fought for. Some things, the more you chase, the further they drift. But there are also things that when you stop running after them, when you sit down and breathe deeply, gently come to you like a cool breeze at dusk, like a flower blooming in silence. The Buddha taught, the root of suffering is attachment. The mind that wants to hold on to, have more to make it last forever. That is the very thing pulling you away from the natural peace already within you. Peace does not come from control, but from letting go at the right moment. Freedom does not come from winning, but from no longer being bound to outcomes, to the past, or to others' expectations. And you know what? Letting go doesn't mean indifference, doesn't mean giving up hope. It means becoming clear, seeing what truly needs to be held on to and what it's time to release. Letting go is an act of wisdom, an act of kindness toward yourself. Tonight, as you sit and listen, maybe you won't change the whole world, but you can begin to change the way you see it. You can let your shoulders relax after carrying so much. You can allow your heart to soften. You can look at something that once caused you pain and quietly say, I don't need to hold on to you anymore. From that moment, a new space opens. A space for acceptance, for stillness, and for a kind of peace that isn't dependent on what happens outside. And then in that silence, you'll begin to see something deeper. Everything you've ever held, ever lost, ever feared, they were all expressions of a greater truth. Everything is impermanent. Not because you were wrong to hold on, but because you hadn't yet seen that the nature of life is movement. What comes will go. What stays will change. And that understanding is the doorway back to your deepest peace, a place where nothing needs to be gripped and everything can be cherished. Now come walk with me through that doorway. We will begin with impermanence. In this era of constant upheaval, as people endlessly search for peace amidst the rush of change, one truth becomes clear: what makes us suffer is not always the event itself, but our refusal to accept that everything is changing. And that truth in the teachings of the Buddha is called by a familiar yet profound name: impermanence. Have you ever paused in the middle of your busy life to look at a leaf when it's green and full? We rarely notice, but one day when it turns yellow, when the wind carries it gently to the ground, we're startled to realize everything has changed without us knowing. Life is like that too. What you hold today, a close relationship, a role you've built, your health that seems steady, even your sense of inner calm, all of it is already in the process of changing. not might change. It is changing every second. And here's the strange thing. We know that in our minds, but we don't live it in our hearts. We say, yes, life is impermanent, but we're still devastated when someone stops loving us, when a chance slips away, or when a plan doesn't go as hoped. We've grown used to living as if everything is forever. And that false belief, that is the true root of suffering. But this isn't meant to frighten you. On the contrary, it's the key that opens the door to true freedom. When you understand that everything will change, you stop placing your entire happiness in something that can't last. You no longer cling to, this must happen, or that must not happen. You begin to live each moment fully, not to cling, but to be truly present. Have you ever lain in bed at night while your mind feels like it's fighting a war? It replays unfinished things. From the day imagines the worst for tomorrow, looping between worry and regret, like a maze with no exit. That's not because you're overthinking. It's because your mind is resisting the truth that everything is changing. Science calls it pre-sleep anxiety. Meditation calls it clinging to what's not real. Different names, same cause. Your mind is holding on too tightly to something, and that grip is what keeps you from resting. But you don't have to win this battle. You only need to see clearly that it's not a real battle. And then you breathe. Inhale, noticing the tension. Exhale gently, releasing the need to control everything. Like a lake, only when the surface is still can you see the bottom. Your mind is the same, only when it stops trying to shape, chase, or resist can you see the peace that's always been beneath the motion. And you'll see one sleepless night will pass. A fear that once felt unbearable will begin to quiet. You don't need to push life into your direction, because life has always been flowing to its own mysterious rhythm. All you need to do is see clearly and walk with it. And maybe just tonight, as you lie down with that understanding in your heart, sleep peace and gentle awakening will begin to find their way back to you, quietly, like a late autumn leaf falling to earth without a sound. In meditation, there is a practice that's simple, yet profoundly deep. See everything just as it is, and don't try to change it. When a thought about the past arises, just note, this is a thought. When a fear appears, simply observe. This is a feeling. No reaction. No judgment, no resistance. That's the true root of suffering. Not that things change, but that our minds refuse to change with them. When you accept impermanence, you stop struggling in the river. You begin to float with the current, and that's what makes you lighter. In Buddhism, the teaching on impermanence is not meant to be depressing. It's a gateway to awakening. It teaches you to appreciate the present because it won't last. It teaches you to love those beside you because no one can stay with us forever. It teaches you to let go because clinging to what's old closes your heart to what's new. You can apply this each night before sleep. As you lie down, try whispering silently in your heart, "Today has passed. Everything will change, and I can release it all to rest." That sentence is like a lullaby. It's not a mantra, but a gentle reminder that you don't need to carry the whole world into your sleep. If tonight you feel worried, confused, or unsettled, that's okay. They're just visitors. Invite them in for tea. Sit with them. Watch them. And when you stop holding on, they will leave on their own. In the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha taught the body is impermanent. Feelings are impermanent. The mind is impermanent. All phenomena are impermanent. Even mindfulness itself, do not cling to it. It comes and it goes. You don't have to hold on to even the calm. Just keep seeing, keep breathing, keep living with wakefulness. When we understand impermanence, we no longer fear change. We begin to live more deeply, more slowly, more kindly. We don't rush to harvest because we know every flower will fade. But that's why we cherish every petal more. We don't hurry to speak bitter words because it might be the last time we see that person. And we learn to say words of love before it's too late. Practice living with impermanence, and you'll feel lighter. Each night you can look back and ask yourself, what did I cling to today? Is there anything I can let go of so I can sleep in peace? Let impermanence no longer be just a concept, but a companion that reminds you to live with gratitude and to let go at the right moment. Many people, when they first begin the spiritual path, often carry a certain expectation that meditation must be quiet, that practice must eliminate all distracting thoughts, that only when the mind is perfectly still can true practice begin. And because of that expectation, they often fall into a recurring sense of failure. I can't meditate because my mind still thinks too much. But in the Buddha's teaching, stillness is not the requirement for practice. It is the natural result of practicing correctly. And this practice doesn't begin with the absence of noise. It begins with the presence of a clear seeing. Seeing clearly what is happening in your own mind, without judgment, without resistance, without decorating or explaining it. Many people think mindfulness is a technique to be learned, but truly it is an attitude toward life, a way of being present, a silent companionship with each moment. When a stream of thoughts about the past arises, you don't need to push it away or analyze it. You only need to see, this is a thought. When a wave of anger surfaces, you don't need to suppress it or act on it. Just quietly acknowledge, this is anger. And then you'll begin to realize something profound. When you see clearly, you are no longer swept away. When you name it accurately, it no longer controls you. Mindfulness doesn't try to fix the content of thoughts or emotions. It simply shines light on their nature. It doesn't intervene or control. It simply knows. And that knowing, if steady and calm enough, becomes a safe refuge, a space where you are no longer pulled or chased by your own inner world. Imagine a dark room. You stumble, fall, and feel fear. But if someone turns on the light, nothing needs to be cleaned up. Everything is revealed, and you naturally find your way. Mindfulness is like that. It is the light. It does not fight the chaos in your mind. It does not destroy thoughts. But when that light is present, darkness has nowhere to hide. And the wonder is that light is already within you. You don't need to borrow it from anywhere else. You just need to pause, breathe in, and see. See without force. See without fixing. See in order to be present. And that presence, as gentle as the breath, as deep as the ocean, becomes the first foundation for all transformation. In daily life, many people think mindfulness means sitting in meditation for hours, silently like a monk on a mountaintop. But meditation is not confined to the cushion. It can be present in the simplest actions as long as you are fully present with them. When washing dishes, just wash the dishes. Don't think about what's next. Don't scroll your phone. Just feel the water on your hands, listen to the sound of bowls lightly touching, and let your mind settle like soap bubbles dissolving. When eating, just eat. Taste the food, chew, slowly be aware that you are nourishing your body. Don't rush through the meal like a task to finish. When walking, just walk. Each step is a chance to come home. Don't run into the future or drag along the past. There is only the step and life itself. And when you hug someone, let your presence be fully in that embrace. No need for many words. Just be there. Because sometimes healing doesn't come from advice, but from a silent, genuine presence. Modern psychology confirms what Buddhism has taught for thousands of years. Most anxiety, depression, and stress do not come from what's happening, but from the mind's refusal to stay with the present. The mind is pulled back into the past to regret, or flung into the future to worry. Meanwhile, the present, the only place we truly live, is abandoned. And sadly, this happens not only when we're busy, but even in moments that should be peaceful, like when we're about to sleep. Before closing their eyes, many people can't let go of the day. An unfinished conversation, a mistake that brings regret, a fear about tomorrow. The mind won't settle. Sleep doesn't come. The body lies still, but the mind keeps racing. But you know what? You don't need to wait for your mind to be quiet before you begin practicing. You also don't need to fight your thoughts. You only need one thing to clearly see that you're feeling unsettled. Mindfulness doesn't ask you to be perfect. It only asks you to return to the breath, to the body, to your actual state of mind, even if it's chaotic. And from that return, something strange will happen. Not because you accomplished anything great, but because you are present. And sometimes being truly present is enough to begin healing. Someone who is deeply angry, if they are mindful enough to see that they are angry, is no longer completely controlled by that anger. And someone who is anxious, if they can clearly recognize I am anxious, has already created a small but powerful space between themselves and that anxiety. Mindfulness doesn't eliminate anger or fear right away, but it opens a space where you are no longer identified with them. You are not the anger. You are not the fear. You are the one who sees them, and in that seeing, you begin to have a choice. Mindfulness is the doorway into all higher qualities of the heart. Compassion. When you see your own suffering clearly, you become gentler with others. Wisdom. When you don't react impulsively, you can see the deeper cause. Non-attachment. When you know you're clinging, you begin to let go. Letting go. Not because you force yourself, but because you see that holding on no longer helps. No self. When mindfulness is deep, you realize thoughts and emotions are just events arising, not you. Mindfulness is also the foundation of the 4 foundations of mindfulness, the core practice the Buddha taught to lead to awakening. 1. Mindfulness of the body, seeing clearly when the body walks, sits, breathes. 2. Mindfulness of feelings, recognizing pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral sensations as they pass. 3. Mindfulness of the mind, knowing when the mind is restless, when it is bored, when it is peaceful. 4. Mindfulness of mental objects, seeing how all phenomena arise and pass, revealing their impermanence and non-self nature. All of this does not begin with a long retreat or a sacred ceremony. It begins right now as you breathe in and know you're breathing in. Breathe out and know you're breathing out. You don't need to wait until your mind is perfect to begin. You don't need to wait until you have free time to practice. This present moment is enough. Meditation is not in the posture. It is in the place where your mind returns to the truth of itself. And from that deep presence, from the courage to look directly at your mind without running away, something precious begins to blossom within you. The ability to discern what is real and what is merely illusion. No more unconscious reactivity. No more getting swept into thoughts as if they are the only truth, but a clear seeing. This feeling is arising, but it is not me. This thought is appearing, but it will also pass. In that very moment, wisdom begins to arise, not from books, not from someone else's lecture, but from your direct experience of reality, unfiltered by craving or resistance. That wisdom is not mysterious. It doesn't shout slogans. It only whispers, "This everything is changing." Nothing truly belongs to you. Nothing can be held on to forever. And when you see that, not with the mind but with the heart, you begin to live more lightly, breathe more deeply, let go more easily. Not because you've become indifferent, but because you've stopped placing your expectations in the wrong places. That is the wisdom of understanding, not imposed, not preachy, but illuminating, like a lamp placed inside your heart. And when that light is switched on, you will see freedom was never far away. It was only covered by the things you mistook as yourself. Many people believe that wisdom is the result of reading many books, listening to many teachings, and accumulating a great deal of knowledge. But if you've ever gone through suffering, if you've ever sat silently through a long night, face to face with yourself, you'll understand knowledge and wisdom are two very different things. Knowledge can be accumulated from the outside, but wisdom, true seeing, only arises when you dare to live deeply with your own experience, whether pleasant or painful. Wisdom doesn't require you to become a scholar. It requires you to be truly present with reality, without coloring it, without pushing it away, without running from it. And this is only possible when your mind is illuminated by mindfulness. When mindfulness is present, wisdom naturally begins to bloom. Wisdom is not sharp reasoning. It is not the ability to win debates. Wisdom is the ability to see into the heart of things without being clouded by bias emotions or habitual reactions. For example, when an emotion like anger arises, instead of yelling or suppressing it, you pause and look directly. This is anger. You don't analyze why. You don't blame anyone. You're simply present with it as it is. In that moment, you may see this anger has a shape, a heat, a rhythm of its own, and then it begins to change. It rises, fluctuates, and if you don't feed it, it quiets down. You don't need to push it away. You only need to not identify with it. In meditation, as the mind begins to settle, you may encounter long suppressed emotions, loneliness, old wounds, unnamed fears. The mind's usual reaction is to push them away, ignore them, or look for a distraction. But if you have the courage to sit with them without reacting, only observing, you will see suffering is not as frightening as it once seemed. It's not an enemy to be defeated. It's a teacher offering you a lesson. Modern psychology calls this the capacity for self-observation and emotional integration, a foundational element of healing. Buddhism calls it vipassana insight, a deep seeing that helps you understand suffering is not wrong. Suffering is a natural part of human life, and when you see suffering clearly, it no longer overpowers you. You don't need to eliminate it. You just need to see it as it is impermanent, unstable, and capable of passing through. From that, seeing real wisdom begins to take shape. Not the kind of wisdom to teach others, but the kind that helps you live in alignment with yourself, make choices with compassion, act with understanding, and let go with ease. When wisdom is present, you're no longer driven by reactivity. You act from clarity, not from wounds. You love with awareness, not from fear of loss. You let go not because of helplessness, but because you see the more tightly you hold, the more it hurts. And sometimes just one moment of clear seeing like that is enough to transform an entire life. You can practice this in the most ordinary situations. When an unpleasant feeling arises, instead of reacting immediately, pause, take a breath, and ask yourself, what is this feeling? Where did it come from? Can I be sure it will stay forever? This isn't meant to trigger analysis, but to awaken presence. A wise person knows how to pause, knows how to observe before reacting. No need to win. No need to prove anything. They give the mind a moment of stillness, and in that stillness, wisdom speaks. Even sleep becomes lighter. You no longer stay up all night over a hurtful remark, replaying scenes in your head 100 times. When guided by wisdom, you see clearly it was just a sentence, just a feeling, not worth dragging into your sleep. You let it go more easily and rest more deeply. Before bed, you can reflect on your day. What stirred my heart today? Did I react out of habit? Did I see myself clearly, or was I just chasing unresolved emotions? Just seeing these things is already a step of practice. In the Four Noble Truths, the Buddha taught that wisdom arises from clearly seeing suffering, understanding its cause, knowing it can end, and recognizing the path to freedom. This is not a theory. It is a way of mindful living. Wisdom is never separate from compassion. When you clearly see your own suffering, you also begin to see the suffering of others. From there, you stop judging so easily. You soften, become more tolerant, listen more deeply. This is the sign of someone with insight. They don't speak much, but every word carries healing. A truly wise person isn't swayed by praise or blame. They don't need to please anyone, nor do they need to prove themselves. They simply live with deep understanding and an inner sense of peace. You don't need to read hundreds of books to have wisdom. You only need a few moments each day to reflect, to ask your mind a few simple questions, to practice pausing before reacting, to look deeply into a single emotion, to breathe consciously when anxiety comes. These small acts done regularly will grow into deep inner strength. And from that place of wisdom, you will slowly develop the courage to face what you once avoided. You no longer need to pretend to be strong. You no longer need to prove that you're okay. You begin to learn how to acknowledge your pain, not to drown in it, but to illuminate it with the light of understanding. Because only when pain is truly seen in the right way does it begin to dissolve. There are wounds that don't need to be healed right away. They don't need you to fully understand them or immediately move past them. Sometimes the only thing they need is simply to be seen. In modern society, where everyone is encouraged to stay positive, keep moving forward, and get over it, the simple act of sitting down and listening to your own pain becomes almost a rebellious act. You were taught, be strong. But no one told you that sometimes the greatest strength is in daring to admit you're feeling weak. You were told, just forget and move on. But no one taught you that what is pushed out of conscious awareness often repeats in the subconscious and deeper still in your sleep, in your breathlessness, in those nameless tears that suddenly fall. There are kinds of pain that can't be erased by advice and won't dissolve through forced positivity. They only need to be touched with genuine presence, like an old friend quietly sitting beside you on a rainy day. No explanations, no fixing, just being there. Acknowledging is not surrender. Acknowledging is the courageous act of an awakened mind that dares to look and say, I know you're here. I won't abandon you. I won't pretend you don't exist. That is not weakness. That is the first step of the deepest healing through honesty. In meditation, the practitioner doesn't try to chase away emotions. They don't try to turn themselves into a perfectly peaceful person. They simply sit silently and truthfully like a clear mirror. This is sadness. This is the feeling of being abandoned. This is an unnamed loneliness. No polishing, no darkening, just seeing and breathing with it. Modern psychology calls this emotional regulation through conscious recognition, a form of high emotional intelligence. In Buddhism, this is known as vipassana insight, the ability to see directly without judgment. And strangely, when a person learns to acknowledge their pain, their deepest loneliness begins to soften. It is the loneliness of not understanding yourself. The shame of feeling like I shouldn't be this weak. The loneliness of always having to wear the mask of being okay, even when your heart is breaking inside. But once you dare to name the pain with respect, you stop fighting yourself. You become your own ally. And from that place, you are no longer swallowed by darkness. You become the one holding the lamp, walking through the night, not to escape, but to see clearly what is present. And it is in that seeing, healing begins without needing to rush. Many people struggle to sleep not because their body isn't tired, but because their mind has never been truly heard. Behind the tension of the day, the unanswered emails, the unfinished conversations is a quiet field of untouched memories. Maybe it's the cold look from long ago, a careless word, a moment of abandonment you tried to forget. They're no longer named, but they remain fully alive in the dark corners of the subconscious. And when night falls, when the noise of the outside world fades, these inner voices begin to echo louder. Many people think they just need to try harder to sleep, as if sleep is a switch you can flip. But the mind, if ignored, won't let go so easily. Instead of forcing yourself to sleep, you can begin with something simple. Pause for a few minutes before bed. Place a hand on your chest. Slow your breath. And ask, what in me is waiting to be seen? You might be surprised. Not because something dramatic appears, but because a part of you thought was gone returns. Not to disturb, but to be acknowledged. An old hurt is simply whispering, please don't ignore me anymore. You don't need to analyze. You don't need to fix. You don't need to become your own therapist. Just listen like an old friend knocking at your door. You don't chase them away, nor do you rush to embrace. You simply open your heart and let your presence become a refuge. You can gently whisper inside, I see that you're in pain, and this time I won't abandon you. That is the beginning of loving yourself. And sometimes that quiet presence, soft and gentle, is the doorway to true sleep. Not because you've resolved everything, but because your mind finally knows it has been heard. In the Four Noble Truths, the very first truth the Buddha taught was dukkha, the truth of suffering. And healing doesn't come from denying suffering. It comes from facing it directly. When you have the courage to acknowledge your pain, you are practicing non-self, not making yourself the center, not identifying with the emotion, not labeling yourself as a failure or unworthy. You simply see, this is a mental state. It is not who I am, and it will pass. From there, you begin to learn compassion for yourself, not blaming yourself for not being healed yet, not rushing yourself to be strong, but gently giving your mind a place to rest. There are people who are successful, wealthy, admired, and still feel empty because the pain deep inside them has never been acknowledged. They use achievements to cover it. But the more they cover, the more the wound swells, until one day they finally dare to say to themselves, I have felt so alone. And in that moment, they begin to come home. From the courage to face your pain, you begin to understand others through different eyes. You no longer judge so quickly. You no longer ask, why are they like that? Instead, you quietly say, maybe they're hurting in a way I've hurt too. And in that space, compassion begins to grow. Not pity, but deep empathy. A warm, gentle gaze. No need for many words, just full presence with another, as you've once sat quietly with yourself. In this life, you cannot truly love unless you have tasted pain. Love that has not been tempered by suffering often turns into demand. It seeks more than it gives. It fears abandonment, so it tries to control. It fears lack, so it tries to possess. But once you have fallen, once you've experienced wounds that ache quietly, unseen by others, and still found a way to stand back up, then love within you begins to take on a new shape. It is no longer a craving for someone to fill your emptiness. It becomes a gentle presence, not tied down by attachment, but rooted in a deep understanding that everyone is learning how to love through the cracks in their own heart. Compassion is not a burst of emotion. It is a quality refined over time, through reflection, through nights spent alone, facing the darkness of your own mind. It is the natural fruit of wisdom and mindfulness when you are brave enough not to run from suffering, not just the suffering of others, but your own. In Buddhist teachings, compassion does not begin with helping others. Compassion begins with the courage to embrace yourself. A person who has never sat with their own pain in silence and tears, in inner turmoil, has not truly understood the pain of anyone else. That's why true compassion does not rush to save people. It comes from the ability to refrain from judging, from imposing, from needing the other person to be okay, just so you can feel at ease. That kind of compassion doesn't require others to change in order to please you. It doesn't love because someone is right or pleasant. It loves because it sees clearly that humans are fragile, and in that fragility lies the soil where love can bloom. Compassion is not weakness. On the contrary, it is the quiet strength of a heart that no longer needs to win. A heart that understands everyone is struggling in their own way. So there is no need to fix, no need to preach, no need to correct. Just be present quietly, patiently, like the morning sun, not shouting, not demanding recognition, yet powerful enough to melt a long winter. You'll know you've touched true compassion, not when you feel pain for someone else, but when you no longer want to punish anyone, not even yourself. Compassion is not lofty or distant. It does not require you to be enlightened. It begins in small, often overlooked moments of daily life. When someone says something judgmental and you choose to breathe instead of react. When you listen without needing to interrupt or prove your point. When you say no to something but keep softness in your voice, your eyes, and your posture. That is compassion, silent but powerful. It needs no announcement, no preaching, and especially at night when no one is around for you to pretend to be okay. Compassion for yourself becomes the warm blanket of the day's end. There are nights when you can't sleep, not because someone hurt you, but because you're angry at yourself. Angry for not being perfect. Angry for making another mistake. Angry for still not being the person you think you should be. But if on that very night, you gently sit up, place your hand on your chest and whisper, "I tried my best today. I'm not perfect, but I am learning," then in that moment, compassion has sprouted in you. No one else can give that to you. No one else can stop the inner criticism after you fall. But when you learn to embrace yourself instead of resisting yourself, you'll be surprised. Your heart grows stronger, not weaker. Compassion doesn't make you fragile. It doesn't make you give up. It simply means you no longer have to keep bracing yourself every day just to feel accepted. And in that softening, there is a silent, steady, and deeply enduring strength. In the Karaniya Metta Sutta, the Buddha's discourse on loving kindness, the Buddha offered an unforgettable image. A practitioner should care for others like a mother cares for her only child. No conditions, no selection. Not because the child is good, but simply because they exist, because they are alive, because they are suffering just like us. That kind of love is not born from duty or moral obligation. It is born from a deep seeing into the nature of suffering and non-self. In Buddhism, compassion does not stand alone. True compassion only blossoms when paired with wisdom, when you no longer see others as others, but as extensions of yourself. Then love is no longer a gesture of me giving to you. It becomes a natural flow like sunlight shining on all, not choosing whom to touch, requiring no one to be worthy. There is no need to try hard to love anyone. Love blossoms like a flower when the soil is kind enough, the water deep enough, and the light warm enough. In daily practice, you can plant seeds of compassion in the most ordinary moments. When you're angry at someone, instead of letting your mind rush to blame, breathe slowly and ask, where are they hurting? It might be fear of loss. It might be an old wound. It might be that they simply don't know another way. When you've made a mistake, instead of harsh self-talk, pause and ask, what am I needing that I haven't been able to ask for? Maybe you need understanding. Maybe you need rest. Maybe you need a quiet space to breathe. When a relationship feels heavy, instead of trying to control, ask, can I love without possessing? Love is not a chain. Loving without holding is loving with open hands, not clenched fists. You don't need to be a saint to practice compassion. You only need to carry these questions in your heart, like seeds kept warm each day. And then when the conditions are right, that seed of compassion will awaken in you, not forced, not performed, but real, tender, and full of strength. And from that deep well of compassion, you will feel light enough to let go. Not because you no longer care, but because you no longer need to cling. Not because they don't matter, but because you've understood. Love doesn't always mean holding on. Some things, the more you grip, the more they slip away. Some people, only when released can they truly bloom. In that moment, letting go is no longer abandonment. It becomes an act of nobility. Love carried to its highest form, where nothing more is demanded. Letting go does not mean abandoning life. It does not mean turning your back on happiness, nor does it mean living in hardship or rejecting all forms of joy. Letting go is an inner release, not external deprivation. You can live in a warm home surrounded by comforts and loved ones, and still let go if your heart isn't dependent on them. On the other hand, you could live in a thatched hut, eat simple meals, chant each morning. But if your mind is still full of subtle desires, comparisons, and a craving for recognition, then you are still entangled. Letting go is not measured by what you give up. It is measured by how unbound your heart has become. One may live in a palace yet be free from attachment to gold and silver, and such a person lives in freedom. Another may live minimally, but if their heart constantly longs for more, they are still held captive. In Buddhist teachings, letting go is the doorway to inner freedom. When your mind is no longer attached to impermanent things, then loss is no longer a tragedy. When you no longer need wealth, status, or others to validate your worth, your very presence is no longer a burden to maintain or prove each day. Modern psychology is moving in the same direction. Research shows the more you hold on, the more anxious you become. The more you try to control, the more exhausted you feel. The more you identify with the ego, the harder it is to sleep, and the more easily you're hurt by small things. In today's world flooded with information and expectations, letting go is no longer a luxury. It's a psychological survival skill. You don't let go out of despair. You let go because you realize freedom doesn't come from having more. It comes from needing less. And tonight, before going to bed, if you can sit with yourself and gently ask, what am I holding on to that is making me tired? Then slowly exhale and give it back to the space around you. That alone is already a courageous act of letting go. Not everyone can let go, but anyone can begin with one small moment. Just by being honest, something is holding me back. You don't need to go up a mountain or leave the world to begin living with the spirit of renunciation. True letting go begins in the smallest and most ordinary moments, right in the room you're sitting in how you speak, how you work, how you eat, how you breathe, and how you fall asleep. Each day you can ask yourself 3 simple questions. Do I really need this? Am I holding on to this for its true value or just because I'm afraid to lose it? If I set it down, would my heart feel lighter? The answers don't need to come right away, but asking these questions, that alone, is a gesture of mindfulness. And when you persistently ask day after day, you'll begin to see many things you once thought were indispensable are actually just habits of attachment. Before going to bed, try turning off your phone 10 minutes earlier. You don't need calming music. You don't need formal meditation. Just sit, breathe, and ask, what can I let go of tonight? Maybe it's a glance that made you feel hurt, a sentence you didn't get to respond to, an expectation that wasn't fulfilled, a quiet feeling of inadequacy you've carried all day. You don't need to chase it away. Just notice it and breathe it out. Just let it pass through you without resisting or clinging. This is letting go through breath, gentle yet deep. Even in everyday conversations, instead of needing to get your point across, you can pause for a beat. Instead of trying to persuade someone to your logic, you can allow them the space to be who they are. This is letting go in relationships, a kind of love that doesn't demand conditions. When you stop chasing right or wrong, stop clinging to gain or loss, stop using outcomes to define your worth, a very real freedom begins to emerge. You'll realize you don't need to win every conversation. You don't need to hold on to every relationship. You don't need to resolve every feeling. And yet you can still be at peace. Maybe more at peace than ever. In the Four Noble Truths, the Buddha made it clear: the root of all suffering isn't the outside world, but the internal attachment we carry, called tanha, or craving. We don't suffer because the world is impermanent. We suffer because we don't want to accept that it is. Only when we release that attachment can the mind enter the third noble truth, nirodha, the cessation of suffering, a tranquil state where you are no longer pulled by arising and passing gain and loss, right and wrong. No more rising or falling with every emotional wave. In the Dhammapada, there is a line that never gets old. Greater than conquering 1,000 armies is conquering yourself. But to conquer yourself does not mean to dominate or force yourself. It means knowing when to let go. When you don't let go, you are bound. When you don't let go, you're controlled by what you try to keep. You don't need long retreats to begin letting go. You can practice right here in modern life with small, simple steps. Check your phone a little less before bed. Don't feel the need to reply to every message instantly. You are allowed to rest. Don't feel you need to share an opinion in every discussion. Sometimes silence is wisdom. Don't hold on to every memory just because you fear forgetting. You don't need to carry the whole past on your shoulders. Don't carry around someone's hurtful words just to prove you were right and they were wrong. Each of these moments is like unlocking one more padlock on your heart. Bit by bit, you're setting yourself free from the prison created by the mind itself. Letting go is not indifference. It's not about stopping life, stopping love, or stopping effort. On the contrary, letting go is the foundation for living more fully. You still love, but you don't love to possess. You still strive, but not for fame or success. You still move forward, but without needing to race. You give your best, but you don't let the results define your worth. Because you understand, your value doesn't come from what you achieve, but from how fully present you are in each moment. And that is the path of a Dharma practitioner. The path of one who lets go, not to reject life, but to live freely within it, truly and deeply. And once you've begun to let go, even just a little, you'll notice a spaciousness inside, a quiet, calm openness, not empty, but not full of grasping either. That space is not about losing something. It's about returning to a place where you don't need to try so hard. You don't need to prove. You don't need to think more, say more, do more just to be someone. You only need to be. And that is when you touch something deeper than any concept, the empty mind. emptiness is not emptiness. Many people, when they hear the word empty, feel afraid. They associate it with loss, loneliness, a cold void with nothing to hold on to. But in deep meditation and in the Buddha's teachings, emptiness is not the absence of something. It is an open space where nothing occupies the mind, and thus everything can arise. A mind that is not empty is often crowded with too many things at once: opinions, memories, plans, expectations, worries. It's like a cluttered room with objects piled on top of each other, making it hard for air to flow and light to enter. An empty mind, on the other hand, is a wide open space where you are not trapped by fear, not pressed by desire, no longer chasing control or identity. Precisely because it holds nothing, it can receive everything with deep stillness. In Zen Buddhism, this state is likened to a mind like the sky. The sky does not reject clouds, nor does it hold onto them. Clouds come and go, the sky remains vast. So it is with the mind. Sadness, joy, anger, affection, all are clouds. The mind simply sees and lets them pass. No resistance, no identification, no clinging. Modern psychology calls this open awareness. In this state, you are no longer pulled into a particular thought. You don't react as usual. You see without rushing to judge. And because of that, you feel clearer, more spacious, lighter. A person with an empty mind is not indifferent. On the contrary, they are more sensitive in every interaction, quieter but deeper, because they are no longer caught in the ego's need to speak, to prove, or to react. They listen without needing to reply. They are present without needing to do anything to validate it. They love without possessing. They work without being defined by results. An empty mind is the foundation of inner freedom, not because you've gained everything, but because you are no longer possessed by anything. And that is the deepest form of fulfillment in what may appear to be nothing left. Have you ever laid down to sleep, but your head still felt like a tightly packed room? No more lights, no more voices, but inside your mind, everything is still noisy, full of unsaid words, unresolved moments, and imagined scenarios about tomorrow that may never happen. A nameless worry, a breathless feeling even in your own space. You don't want to think anymore, so you try. You push the thoughts out. You command your mind, be quiet. But the more you push, the tighter it clings. The more you resist, the more it returns. And that's when you touch an important truth. Your mind is not empty. It's being occupied by the desire to control, by predictions about the future, by unnamed fears. An empty mind doesn't mean no thoughts. It means not being carried away by them. Try something simple before sleep. Sit or lie still. Place a hand over your chest. Take a few soft breaths. And instead of trying to get rid of thoughts, observe your mind as if watching the sky. Oh, tonight, there are dark clouds of anger, some streaks of sorrow, but also a glimmer of gratitude. You don't need to remove anything. Just see and allow it all to be there without clinging or pushing away. That's the moment the mind opens, empties, like a still lake receiving the moonlight without a ripple. Not just before sleep, but in everyday life, an empty mind is the foundation of freedom. When someone says something upsetting, your first impulse may be to respond immediately. But if you know how to pause to create a space, you'll realize you have another choice. Maybe a look. Maybe silence. Maybe a compassionate reply instead of a defensive one. Much of the pain in relationships doesn't come from what happened, but from the lack of space between emotion and action. You can practice creating that space every day. Just one breath before replying to an email. One deep inhale before making a decision. A moment of silence before speaking in an argument. And most importantly, you don't need to fill everything. You don't need to stuff every moment with productivity. You don't need to fill every silence with words. You don't need to crowd every relationship with attachment. Sometimes that empty space is what brings you back to yourself. And that is not emptiness. It is the space where real life begins to take root. In the Heart Sutra, there is a line considered a jewel of meditative wisdom. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. It means form is empty and emptiness is form. This isn't just a line to chant at a sacred ceremony, but something to live in every moment. Because when you look deeply, you'll see every phenomenon, a feeling, a thought, an event, a person is a temporary combination of many causes and conditions. Nothing arises on its own. Nothing lasts forever, and nothing fully belongs to you. When you see that your mind no longer clings, no longer reacts, no longer fears loss, an empty mind is the natural state when you truly understand impermanence, non-self, and non-attachment. Not because you've abandoned life, but because you're living in the world without being entangled by it. Not because you don't care anymore, but because you now care in a way that doesn't depend on outcome. You can love without attachment. You can strive without losing yourself. You can practice emptiness of mind through very small actions, but if repeated daily, they go deep. When someone shares their pain, you don't rush in with advice. You simply be fully present, listening like a still lake. That is emptiness, a space for the other to exist without judgment. When you're waiting at a red light instead of checking your phone, just stand there. Breathe deeply. Feel gratitude for being alive. That is emptiness, not needing to do something to feel worthy. When someone praises you, you don't cling to "I am good." When someone criticizes you, you don't need to defend the hurt ego. Both praise and blame are just ripples on the water. The empty mind is not swept away, not because you're indifferent, but because you've created a deep inner space that doesn't need to react to fight or to prove anything. From that space, everything you do, work, relationships, creativity, or simply eating a meal becomes lighter, more peaceful, more free. That is the invisible power of an empty mind, a space that holds the whole world, yet is not ruled by it. And then you'll see only. When your mind is empty enough, do you truly realize you are not anyone at all. You're not the person who needs recognition. You're not the one who always has to be right. You're not the one who always needs to be loved. An empty mind is the doorway through which non-self begins to bloom. And when you no longer carry a fixed image of "I am this" or "I must be that," you begin to see a deeper truth. There is no fixed self here at all. We grow up and spend most of our lives living in a role. At times, we are the one who must always succeed, not allowed to fail. At times, the kind one who must always be patient, never angry. At times, the spiritual one who must always appear calm, proper, and wise. But the more we try to play these roles perfectly, the further we drift from ourselves. The harder we try to become a better version, the less courage we have to face the hidden corners, the dark spaces, and the raw emotions that make up our real experience. In the Buddhist teaching, anatta non-self does not mean you do not exist. It means you are not the labels you've placed upon yourself. You are not the strong one. You are not the intelligent one. You are not the failure. You are not even the enlightened one. All of these are temporary masks, borrowed roles, because you, like all phenomena, are constantly changing. Yesterday's emotions are not today's emotions. Your body today is not the same as it was 3 years ago. Even your beliefs, your thoughts, your reactions, they all shift from hour to hour, moment to moment. In Buddhist doctrine, non-self is one of the 3 marks of existence alongside impermanence, anicca, and suffering, dukkha. These are the 3 universal characteristics that define all phenomena. If something lacks these 3, it cannot be truth. Once you see that everything is impermanent, the self can no longer be seen as fixed or solid. Seeing this does not make you disappear. On the contrary, it frees you from the pressure to be someone. You no longer need to strain to maintain an image. You no longer need to regret who you were. You no longer need to panic if one day you act differently, because you are not the role. You are not the label. You are simply life itself expressing in countless forms. And in that spaciousness, where there is no longer a need to defend or prove an identity, peace begins to blossom. Not from doing everything right, but from living authentically with each changing moment. Have you ever felt exhausted from always being the strong one? There are days your heart feels cracked, but you keep smiling, saying, "I'm fine," acting composed as if no storm were raging inside. Not because you feel nothing, but because you're afraid. Afraid that showing vulnerability might cause you to lose the role you've spent years building, the resilient one, the mature one, the unshakable one. But the truth is, even the most beautiful role is tiring. You can play the kind person so well that you no longer dare to say no. You can play the wise person so well that you're afraid to admit confusion. You can play the spiritual person so well that you suppress anger, even when a fire is burning inside, and so you live confined within the images you've created. Before going to sleep, pause for a moment. Sit down gently and ask yourself, which role did I live in today? Is there something inside me that longs to be released but hasn't yet? If I set that role down, what remains? The miracle is this. It's only when you let go of the role that you finally touch your true self. No longer the one who must always be strong. No longer the one who must be loved. No longer the one who must be perfect to be accepted. What remains is simply a consciousness present, breathing, feeling, and aware of what is without resisting, controlling, or hiding. In the practice of non-self, you do not deny emotions. You simply stop calling them me. When anger arises, you don't have to say, "I am an angry person." You simply recognize anger is passing through. When fear appears, you don't have to say, "I am weak." You just breathe with it and note, there is fear in this mind. This difference, though small, is the great shift from identification to freedom. Because once you no longer build yourself around roles, you no longer need to protect them. Then every success will not make you proud, and every failure will not make you collapse. You begin to live without performing, just being sincerely and deeply. And perhaps the most liberating experience of all is to be no one at all, for in that no one space, everything can arise: compassion, wisdom, peace, and the true rest that comes with sleep. In the Anatalakkhana Sutta, the discourse on the characteristic of non-self, the Buddha taught a truth that once understood frees you from much suffering. This is not mine. This is not me. This is not myself. At first, this may sound abstract, but when applied to daily life, it becomes simple and profoundly transformative. When someone says to you, "You're so talented," instead of letting the ego swell, instead of clinging to the praise as a title to preserve, you can quietly acknowledge that compliment refers to an action, not to an unchanging essence. When someone says, "You're a failure," instead of shrinking with pain, you can gently see, this is just a thought passing through the mind. It does not define who I am. Non-self does not make you lost. It opens the path to freedom, where you are no longer controlled by praise or blame, no longer forced to hold any image in order to feel worthy. You no longer need to chase expectations. You no longer need to fear being misunderstood. You no longer need to always be right, always composed, always wise. You are allowed to simply be as you are in the natural flow of each changing moment. And strangely, you begin to feel lighter each day. Not lighter because you have fewer tasks, not lighter because life has fewer challenges, but lighter because you no longer carry the heavy burden of a self that must always be right, beautiful, or superior. You can practice this truth in small daily ways. When someone praises you, just smile softly and let it pass. When criticized, take a deep breath and ask, is this reaction truly me? When the mind wants to prove something, pause. One breath, one small space, an opportunity not to merge with the role. And every night before sleep, you can place a hand on your chest and ask, which role did I get caught in today? What can I set down so that tomorrow feels lighter? Non-self does not mean losing yourself. It means releasing the illusion of a fixed identity so you can return to the open living reality, free from costumes, free from masks. It is not nothingness. It is the true space where love, life, and peace can arise. And when there is no longer a self to defend, you realize there is nothing left to hold. You don't need to hold on to arguments to win. You don't need to hold on to pain to prove you were hurt. You don't need to hold on to old images to sustain a tired role. Non-self opens the door, and letting go is the step that walks through it. Letting go doesn't mean throwing away, turning away, or denying. Letting go in the spirit of Buddhist teachings is an act of opening. Opening your hands from what you cannot control. Opening your heart to what is present, even if it's still imperfect. And opening your awareness to the truth that not everything is meant to be held onto. Have you ever held onto a painful comment for years? A glance that made you feel small? An unmet expectation that made you carry a sense of failure? We hold on to so many things that are no longer needed simply because we haven't yet learned how to let go. We hold on to an image of ourselves that isn't real. We hold on to a person who's no longer here. We hold on to something that hasn't happened yet and fear it as if it certainly will. All of these things take up space in the mind, leaving no room to breathe. Like trying to pack more into a suitcase that's already full without realizing you're allowed to unpack. Letting go doesn't mean doing less. It means acting without being bound. When you live in control, you become tense. When you act from fear, you burn out. When you love with the fear of losing, you're gripping, not supporting. Only when you learn to let go where it matters can you act with inner freedom, not pulled by the past, not held by expectation, not governed by outcome. In the Buddha's teachings, letting go is the doorway to true freedom, because the root of suffering is attachment. When you see impermanence, you understand that all things are passing. When you deeply grasp non-self, you stop treating things as mine. And so you can gently put things down without feeling like you've lost anything. Modern psychology confirms this too. People who know how to let go at the right time experience better mental health, deeper sleep, reduced stress, and greater adaptability. They don't let go out of weakness, but out of wisdom. They know that energy should be given to what can be changed, and for the rest, they learn to exhale. Before you sleep, you might ask yourself, what am I holding on to today that's not necessary? Is there an emotion making me tired that I keep carrying, as if without it I wouldn't be myself? Simply recognizing what you're holding and breathing out with it is already a step toward letting go. You don't need to proclaim that you're releasing the whole world. Just each night, set down one small thing, an expectation, a grudge, a ripple of anxiety, and you'll begin to see, when the hand opens, the heart opens, and only when the heart opens can peace enter. Have you ever lain down to sleep while your mind was spinning with something that hasn't even happened? A conversation you keep replaying in your head, a phrase you regret saying, something you know you can't change but the mind still refuses to let go. Many people believe they lose sleep due to work stress or external pressure. But often the quietest reason is this: your mind is still clinging tightly to something it should have released. Not because you're weak, but because you didn't realize when you started carrying it. Maybe you've forgiven others, but not yourself. Maybe you've moved on, but part of you still lingers in the past where the wound never got named. Before bed, don't just cleanse your skin, tidy the sheets, or turn off the lights. Clear the mind. Sit quietly for a few minutes. Place your hand on your chest. Take 3 deep breaths. Then gently ask, what am I still holding in my heart tonight? Do I still need to carry this? If not, give yourself permission to set it down. No need to be extreme. No need to be forceful. Just give the mind space to breathe. A night of rest from what tomorrow may reveal was never that important. In a world that moves fast and demands constant performance, people often get trapped in the cycle of doing, achieving, proving, controlling. But in that very world, letting go is an act of great courage and wisdom. Not everyone dares to do it. You can practice deep letting go through small daily moments. When someone misunderstands you, instead of spending your energy explaining endlessly, you can quietly say to yourself, I'm clear within. I don't need to prove anything more. When a project, a meeting, or a presentation doesn't go as expected, return to yourself and ask, did I give it my best? If yes, then the rest is for learning, not regretting. When sadness arises, instead of pushing it away, as weakness, invite it to sit with you for a while. Breathe with it. Then allow it to leave, not with hate, not by force. Letting go doesn't make you passive. Letting go is opening the door for the wind to come in and for pain to walk out. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha said, "Letting go of one thing, the heart feels lighter. Letting go of 100, the mind shines like the moon." He never asked you to let go of everything all at once. He never demanded that you become a person free from everything. He simply invited you to look closely. Do I really need to keep holding this? Or am I carrying it only because I'm afraid to let it go? Like a traveler in the forest, you cannot carry the entire world on your back. At some point, you must stop, open the backpack, and unpack. Lightness doesn't come from having nothing, but from carrying only what is necessary for the path ahead. Modern psychology says the same. Research shows that people who let go wisely have stronger immune systems, deeper sleep and stable heart rates, emotional resilience and less reactivity, more sustainable relationships because they don't control or expect excessively. You can apply this simple nightly practice. 1. Before bed, take a small piece of paper or open your phone's notes. 2. Write down one thing you're holding on to. 3. Ask, can I control this? If yes, make a gentle plan. If no, breathe in deeply, breathe out slowly, then write, I give myself permission to let this go. 4. Close your eyes and feel. Is something inside me lighter now? Repeat each day, just one small thing, one simple habit. But it's these subtle actions that lead to the deepest transformation. You let go, not because it doesn't matter, but because something else matters more. Peace, a restful sleep, and a tomorrow light enough to move forward. When you've practiced letting go long enough, you'll discover something profound. You still work, you still love, you still show up. But no longer from pressure, no longer from fear, no longer from clinging. Now everything you do arises from stillness, from clarity, from inner freedom. There are days when you push yourself to exhaustion. You try every method, say every word, plan every detail, yet the outcome remains unchanged. Everything veers off course, still not as you hoped. Then there are days when you do nothing special. Just live, just breathe, let everything flow naturally. And strangely, good things begin to arrive gently, unexpectedly, without force. That difference does not lie in effort. It lies in the quality of the mind. And that is Wu Wei, a deep concept in Zen study and Eastern philosophy. Not doing nothing but acting without forcing. Wu Wei does not mean passivity. It is a very active style of living, but without compulsion. A person living in Wu Wei is not someone who abandons everything. Rather, they understand that the deepest actions do not arise from panic, but from awareness. In Buddhism, Wu Wei is action that accords with the nature of Dharma, namely, the natural movement of karma, impermanence, and non-self. In harmony with impermanence, you do not fight change. In harmony with non-self, you need not defend your self-image. In harmony with karma, you do what is right and allow results to ripen with conditions. It is like a seed cannot bear fruit simply because you stare at it. The more impatient you are, the more you dig it up to check, the more you ruin its process. Wu Wei is knowing how to plant, then letting the soil, sun, and rain do their work. In modern life, this is especially valuable. Living in a high-performance society where everything is measured by KPIs, deadlines, and productivity. But that very structure leads to exhaustion, stress, and disconnection from oneself. Wu Wei does not eliminate action. It makes action deeper because it emerges from stillness, not from fear or competition. When you speak a kind word, not to earn love, but because your heart is soft. When you help someone, not expecting gratitude, but because you clearly see your connection. When you step back in an argument, not because you lose, but because you need not win to find peace. In sleep, Wu Wei is the state when you allow body and mind to rest without forcing them to be calm. Many people cannot sleep not because they are not tired, but because they try too hard to make themselves sleep. Paradoxically, that very effort makes the mind tenser. Try sitting quietly before sleep. No need to do anything. Just breathe and be present. Do not force meditation, do not demand the mind to be silent. Simply notice what is present and let it flow. In the Buddhist scriptures, the Buddha never urged abandoning action. He emphasized act from mindfulness, not from greed, anger, or delusion. Live like water without fighting, yet always knowing the course. When you speak from peace, your words have healing power. When you act from stillness, your deeds become firm. When you love without holding, that love can nourish without becoming chains. And that is the spirit of Wu Wei. Act as if not acting. Let go, yet remain deep. Be present, yet not control. When you live this way, you are no longer swept away by life. You become part of the flow, not struck down by waves, but water itself, light, enduring, and flexible. In daily life, Wu Wei is not an abstract concept, nor an unreachable ideal reserved for enlightened beings. It appears in every small choice, every breath, every moment we pause and stop overdoing effort. Tonight, before sleep, instead of pushing your mind through the list of unfinished tasks, you might gently ask, "Tonight, what am I forcing? Am I straining to control something that cannot be controlled? Am I carrying the expectation that I must sleep well?" Wu Wei is when you stop forcing. Stop forcing yourself to be calm. Stop forcing others to understand. Stop forcing life to go according to your plan. You don't need to force the mind to be quiet, just create the conditions for it to settle. Like tending a garden, you cannot shout at a seed to sprout faster. You water it, prepare the soil, give it sunlight, and wait. In work or relationships, the spirit of Wu Wei is do right. Then let go. Speak honestly, act from your heart, but don't allow results to define your worth. Be kind without needing others to see your kindness. Make effort without demanding confirmation. The greatest fatigue in life doesn't come from heavy work. It comes from a mind stretched by expectations, striving, and fear. You fear not being recognized. You push to avoid misunderstanding. You strain to keep an image you believe must be maintained. But you can live differently, a life of awareness and ease. Let life operate like breathing, inhale, exhale. Movement, stillness. Beginnings, endings. You cannot hold breath without harm. Likewise, if you force life to stand still, you suffocate. Wu Wei is the wisdom of one who knows how to step back without giving up, to know silence without resignation, to do wholeheartedly, then rest in letting go. And perhaps that is the most profound way to live in a rushed world. In the scriptures, the Buddha taught, "The wise do as if without doing, speak as if without speaking." That statement is not contradictory. It describes the state of Wu Wei, where actions arise from wisdom, not ego. One still acts, but is not bound to what is done. They seek no credit, make no comparisons, expect no return. Therefore, they do not grow weary. Wu Wei is not passivity, it is mindful action. Do what must be done, with an open heart, without fear, without cunning. When the mind is at peace, all things fall into place. When the mind is clear, all paths open. In modern psychology, this state is sometimes called flow, the natural current when body and mind unite. One in that state does not feel heaviness, does not tally. Results does not exhaust because their actions emerge from balanced awareness. You can practice this daily in small ways. When something does not go as you wished, instead of forcing a fix, observe, what am I forcing? When tension arises, pause and return to your breath where there is no must or should. When hurt arises, instead of reacting, relax your grip, allow the emotion to dissolve without combat. This is Wu Wei in each moment. No need for long meditation sessions, just live mindfully within motion. When you act in Wu Wei, you begin to experience something deeper. The heart no longer wants to cling, no longer wants to prove itself right, no longer wants to affirm the self. No need to win. Then non-attachment gradually forms a state where things are seen as they are not through the lens of me or mine. Non-attachment does not mean indifference. It is not withdrawing from life or pretending to need nothing. Non-attachment is love without bondage, a heart open enough to be present, yet not imprisoned by anything. You can love but not possess. You can care but not impose outcomes. You can give but not expect return. You can help someone stand, then quietly step away once they are steady. That is non-attachment, and it is also the purest form of love. There is a great difference between connection and clinging. Connection is a beautiful part of life when you love deeply, care sincerely, and connect naturally. But when that love is conditioned by the fear of loss, by unspoken expectations, by the need for approval and ownership, it becomes clinging. And clinging always carries suffering. Clinging robs you of inner freedom. When others don't respond as you hoped, you feel disappointed. When work doesn't bring the results you imagined, you lose direction. When a relationship ends, you fall into panic, not because of the other person, but because the self cannot accept being left behind. Non-attachment is a profound kind of freedom, but never cold. You still live among people, still love, still work, still give yourself fully. But you understand that everything changes, and you no longer try to force anything to last forever. In Buddhism, non-attachment is the natural fruit that grows when the mind clearly sees impermanence, non-self, and suffering. When you truly see that nothing belongs to you, you no longer need to grasp. When you understand that you yourself change day by day, you stop trapping others inside the version you expect of them. Modern psychology agrees. People who can release unhealthy attachments tend to have more stable mental health, are less prone to depression and anxiety, and are less likely to repeat toxic emotional patterns because they no longer treat others as the only source of safety, nor place the burden of making me happy on someone else. In daily life, you can practice non-attachment like this. When someone doesn't understand you, instead of being hurt, you see they are only seeing me from their own perspective. When you love someone, instead of holding them tightly, silently wish, may you be happy, whether I am part of your life or not. When your effort goes unnoticed, ask yourself, Did I do this out of gratitude or from wanting recognition? And especially at the end of the day, when everything quiets down, breathe gently and ask your heart, what am I holding that I no longer need to hold? Can I love without possessing? Can I let others be free and still not love them any less? Non-attachment doesn't make you love less. It makes your love lighter, deeper, freer. And in that freedom, happiness begins to bloom, not because you hold on, but because you release at the right time. Before you sleep, think of one thing you are holding most tightly right now. Maybe a person you can't stop thinking about, a word left unsaid, a mistake you haven't forgiven, a dream unfulfilled, a sentence that hurt you, but still echoes in your mind every night. Then silently ask your heart, can I love without holding? Can I care without expecting return? Can I set this down just for one night so my heart can rest? The breath is where it begins. Inhale knowing this feeling will also pass. Exhale knowing no moment can be held. And in that release, you begin to feel deep freedom. Non-attachment does not mean you don't care. It simply means your happiness no longer depends on control. You still love without imposing. You still try without despairing when you fail. You still connect without locking yourself inside anyone. In everyday life, you can practice non-attachment through small, simple acts that carry deep transformation. When you are praised instead of swelling with pride, quietly remind yourself, another's perception does not define me. When someone you love behaves differently from what you hoped, don't react right away. Breathe and say inwardly, I love them, not an ideal version of them. When something goes wrong, a broken plan, a failed dream, don't blame. Learn from it. Then let it fall away like an autumn leaf returning to the earth. Non-attachment doesn't make you cold. On the contrary, it teaches a soft strength, resilient, without rigidity. You become steadier because you no longer live by the script in your mind. You are less hurt because you no longer measure your worth by others' actions. And you sleep more deeply because you no longer carry so many unfinished things. You can practice tonight. Place your hand over your heart, breathe softly, and whisper to yourself, this I no longer need to hold. That's all. No need for perfection. No need for drama. Just let go of one small thing so your heart can feel a little lighter. That itself is meditation in daily life. The Buddha once said, nothing is yours. You are only a guest in this world. When you see this truth, you begin to appreciate without clinging. You realize every person you meet, every joy and sorrow, every hand you've held, all are guests. You are a guest. They are guests. All come and all go. And in that not holding a pure kind of love arises a love without condition, a love without possession, a love that remains free. When you practice non-attachment, you also live from compassion because you give others the space to be themselves, not forcing them to meet the image in your mind. You live in mindfulness, seeing life as it is not colored by personal desire. And you practice letting go, not from indifference, but from clearly seeing that all phenomena are dependently arisen, without self-nature and temporary. When you no longer hold, you begin to feel enough. No need for more, no need to fix, no need for someone to change before you can rest in peace. Just be present. Be deeply present. Just breathe, see love, and release. That is when you enter a very quiet level of life, where presence itself is enough. And together, we will continue to explore that deeper layer where you don't need to try to be special, don't need to do more to be worthy. Just by being truly present, you are already enough. In late-night meditation sessions in classrooms, or simply in quiet conversations after a long day, there's a silent pain that many people carry. A pain with no name, not clearly visible, but always there, the feeling of, I am not enough, not smart enough, not kind enough, not calm enough, not successful enough, not lovable enough, not worthy of being seen, not worthy of being loved, and worse than all of that, not enough to deserve rest. That feeling of lack is like an underground current quietly pulling you away from yourself. It pushes you into an endless chase, chasing a better version of yourself you may not even know where it came from. A version drawn from the gaze of others, from the silent expectations of society, of the past, of family, or even from childhood comments said in passing. But the truth is, you don't need to become anything to be at peace. You only need to be fully present with yourself, and that is already enough. In meditation, this is the root of awareness. You don't have to fix yourself before you sit down. You don't have to wait until you feel stable before you can rest. You don't have to reach some ideal version to deserve an exhale of relief. You can sit down right now with all your confusion, disappointment, hurt, and shakiness, and simply breathe. Just breathing is already an act of compassion, and from that very moment, peace begins. The Buddha's teachings never said you must be perfect to be liberated. He simply taught when you clearly see what is present in the mind, a fear, an expectation, a pain, and you no longer identify with it, no longer run away from it, then you have already begun to walk the path of clarity. Not because you've added anything, but because you've dropped what's been covering the truth that was always there. Modern psychology calls this a core human need to be seen, to be accepted without conditions. And that can only come when you stop chasing validation from the outside, when you stop measuring your worth by success or failure image or others' opinions. Instead, you look at yourself with compassionate eyes. Maybe tonight, before you sleep, try placing your hand on your chest and whisper softly, I don't need to be perfect. I just need to be present. Inhale to touch your presence. Exhale to smile at your imperfection. Because in that presence you will begin to see you have always been enough. You don't need to do anything more. You don't need to become anyone else. Just be yourself, present, honest, and alive. Many people enter sleep with a mind that never allows letting go. The body lies down, but the mind stays tight like a stretched string. Was I good enough today? Did I let someone down? Why did I react that way? I should have been calmer, kinder, more compassionate. And so the mind doesn't allow rest, as if you must become a better version of yourself before you're allowed to breathe out. But this is the trap of the I'm not enough mindset, a quiet form of self-rejection that keeps you locked in striving. Tonight, try something different. Before bed, turn off the light. No phone. Don't force thoughts away. Just place one hand on your chest, one hand on your belly. Inhale slowly, very slowly. Exhale deeply, very deeply. And gently remind yourself, in this moment, with everything still unfinished with wounds, still healing with worries, still unresolved, I am still worthy of rest. I don't need to be anyone else to be at peace. My presence is enough. No need to erase the past. No need to fix the future right away. Just be fully present with the now, and that is when the door to peace begins to open. In everyday life, you can nourish this sense of enoughness through simple practices. When you catch yourself comparing to others, pause and ask, what beautiful part of myself have I forgotten to notice? When you make a mistake, instead of harsh self-criticism, look deeper. Am I learning something from this experience? When a dream hasn't come true, don't say I failed. Just breathe and tell yourself I'm still on my journey. I haven't stopped. That's how you give yourself unconditional acceptance, not from others, but from you. In the Buddha's teachings, there is no part of you that needs to be rejected. Wherever the light of mindfulness shines, even the deepest shadow begins to soften. Modern psychology calls this radical self-acceptance not the end of growth, but the end of hating yourself during that growth. And sleep, a natural human need, comes more easily when you no longer believe you have to earn it. You don't need to become exceptional. You only need to be honest with yourself. Just be present with a wide heart and a deep breath. Tonight, that alone is enough. In the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha teaches to observe the body feelings, mind, and mental phenomena without judgment. You notice the body is tense, just acknowledge there is tension. You notice the mind is worried, just acknowledge there is worry. You don't need to change anything immediately. Just seeing it already begins transformation. That mindful presence is the foundation for all deep healing. And to do that, you must stop the inner war. No more forcing yourself to be peaceful. Just recognize I feel unpeaceful with peace. The moment you stop demanding that you change instantly, you begin to taste the flavor of inner freedom, not the feeling of winning, but the feeling of returning. Returning to yourself just as you are. And when you realize that you are enough, you naturally begin to see others with that same fullness. You no longer require them to understand you before you love them. You no longer need them to be like you in order to respect them. You begin to see clearly everyone is carrying their own journey. Everyone has their moments of softness, and everyone deserves to be seen through the lens of mudita joy in others' joy and acceptance. From the fullness within you, step into a higher state of practice, upekkha, equanimity. The ability to love without bitterness, to let go without resentment, to see without hatred. In life, many people believe that joy only comes when something goes their way, a timely success, a friend's praise, or a plan unfolding as expected. And indeed, those moments can make the heart flutter like a flower just blooming. But what happens when the wind changes direction? When that person no longer listens? Or when the outcome doesn't meet your expectations? That joy vanishes instantly, leaving behind an emptiness not only in the heart, but also in one's sense of purpose. That is the shadow side of conditional happiness. It doesn't last. And the more we cling to it, the more easily we suffer when it's gone. But there is another kind of joy, quieter, deeper, steadier, known in Buddhism as mudita and upekkha, joy and equanimity. Equanimity does not arise from gaining more. It blossoms when you no longer demand anything more. You don't need others to understand you. You don't need circumstances to change. You don't need results to be perfect. Equanimity is not indifference. It is an inner joy like a still lake unmoved by wind, unshaken by rain. The lake still sees, still receives, still reflects, but is not disturbed. In the four immeasurables, taught by the Buddha, loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity, joy mudita, and equanimity upekkha, stand side by side. Joy is the happiness one feels for others' success. Equanimity is the balance that transcends gain and loss, right and wrong, love and hate. When the two merge, you experience an unshakable form of happiness, joyful, yet not dependent, calm, yet not cold. Modern psychology calls this well-being. A kind of happiness not triggered by external stimulation. Not the fleeting high from buying something on sale followed by emptiness the next day, but a deep stability within where you can smile, whether in success or failure, whether understood or not. You can begin to cultivate joy and equanimity through small acts. When someone succeeds, instead of feeling jealous or inferior, send them blessings. That blessing is medicine for your own mind. When you haven't achieved what you hoped for, instead of being harsh with yourself, breathe and remind yourself, I am on my path. Not arriving yet doesn't mean I won't arrive. When others are different from you, instead of judging or trying to fix them, sit quietly and observe. Can I understand without needing to control? That is the essence of equanimity. You don't have to do anything to have it. Simply demanding less for things to go your way, and it naturally blooms. A flower doesn't need to be seen to be fragrant. A person with equanimity remains joyful even without recognition. And sleep comes more easily when the mind stops grasping, stops resisting. When you lie down, inhale deeply and simply think, I need nothing more. I am at peace. And that is enough. Some nights you can't fall asleep not because you're too busy, but because something inside you hasn't truly let go. A conversation left unfinished. A glance that lingers in thought. A word that keeps echoing, or simply the feeling that things should have turned out differently. And so you toss and turn not because of fatigue, but because the mind refuses to accept what is. In Buddhist practice, equanimity doesn't mean forcing yourself to be happy or stay positive. It means ending the struggle to make things different. You may still feel dissatisfied. You may still hurt. But you no longer fight reality. You simply see, things are this way. And that seeing without justification, without resistance, lightens the heart. Sleep doesn't come from control, but from release. Just as you cannot pull the moon into the sky, you simply sit still, and the moon rises by itself. Equanimity does not come from action. It comes from perception, a way of seeing that no longer divides better or worse, right or wrong, victory or defeat. A way of seeing that no longer asks, am I enough, but simply says, I am here. And I see clearly what is present. You can practice equanimity in the most ordinary ways. When someone makes a mistake, instead of judging, breathe and think they're on their own journey. I don't need to suffer for them. When you miss an opportunity, instead of self-blame, whisper, The timing wasn't right. It's no one's fault. I'm still walking my path. When others succeed, there's no need to compare. Just remind yourself their success is the ripened fruit of their seeds. I too am planting my own, and then you smile not because everything is perfect, but because you are no longer being pulled around by anything. That smile is the mark of a mind learning to let go, to see, and to rest peacefully, even in imperfection. Tonight before sleep, you might ask yourself, what in me is still holding tight? And then, without fixing anything, just breathe. That very breath is the beginning of equanimity. In the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha taught, the mind of equanimity is the supreme refuge. When you have equanimity, you no longer take shelter in right or wrong, like or dislike. You no longer chase praise nor collapse from blame. You can look at someone who has left your life and still feel gentle inside. You can walk through failure without needing to prove anything. And from that, a quiet kind of joy is born, not dazzling, not overwhelming, not seeking recognition, just a soft feeling deep in the heart. I am alive. I am present. And that is enough. When you practice joy and equanimity regularly, your mind becomes less tangled, less burdened, less tired. Because you are no longer caught in the loop of improvement, control, and comparison. You act because it feels right. You love because it feels true. You stop because it's time. A heart nourished by equanimity will naturally walk the middle path, neither ruled by emotion nor denying it, neither clinging nor avoiding, neither extreme indulgence nor forced detachment. The middle path is the way of wisdom, where you can live fully in this world while keeping your mind balanced, clear, and steady. When the Buddha first shared the Dharma after his enlightenment, what he revealed was not a myth, nor a system of beliefs or rituals. He simply pointed to a path, simple yet profound, called the middle way. A path that lies between two extremes, neither indulging in pleasure nor torturing the body through self-denial. The middle way is not some vague idea of moderation. It is the clear understanding that every extreme harms both body and mind. When you give up completely, the mind sinks into dullness and ignorance. When you push yourself too hard, the mind becomes rigid and restless. But when you walk in the middle, neither rushing nor abandoning, you begin to touch balance, clarity, and true presence. The middle way means knowing when to stop and when to move forward. It means understanding that not everything must be fought, and not everything should be ignored. In meditation practice, the spirit of the middle way is most clearly seen. If you force yourself to be calm, you'll only end up frustrated. If you let the mind run wild, you'll lose direction. But if you simply sit quietly observing without grasping, without rejecting, you will see the mind settle naturally like a lake when the wind ceases, to see without interference, to know without the need to control. That is the middle way in each breath. Modern psychology calls this psychological flexibility, the ability to respond fluidly to changing conditions. Balanced people are not those who are always right, but those who know when to stop, when to move, when to yield, and when to maintain boundaries. You can apply the middle way in daily life. When working, don't drive yourself to exhaustion, but don't lose focus either. When loving, don't hold too tightly, but don't give up too quickly when things get hard. When arguing, you don't always have to win, but don't stay silent if it violates your values. Every action can be an opportunity to practice the middle way. And tonight, if you're lying awake between fatigue and worry, you can gently ask your heart, which side am I leaning toward? Then inhale softly, exhale gently. In that very moment, you are walking the middle path where there's no need to fight and no need to give up. That is the middle way, the path of inner freedom of light that does not glare, but shines warmly enough to guide the way. Have you ever fallen into one of these two extremes? On one side, over effort, you push yourself to change everything, control every result, stay strong, positive, flawless. You forbid yourself from feeling tired, from failing, from being sad, as if only perfection makes you worthy of rest. On the other side, resignation. Whatever. I can't change anyway. This is just my fate. You withdraw from effort, not because you've let go, but because you've grown too tired to believe. See how both ends over striving or giving up lead to exhaustion. Both pull you away from the place where the mind can truly rest. The middle way doesn't demand perfection. It simply invites you to step back just enough to see clearly. You have the right to rest without quitting. You can feel pain without drowning in it. You can pause without denying your values or responsibilities. Before sleeping, you might sit quietly and ask yourself, have I been trying too hard today? Or have I been unconsciously giving up? Just noticing that you've already started to return. Inhale. Notice the tension in your chest. Exhale. Allow yourself to soften a little. No need to change anything right now. Just breathe and know that you are here in this very moment between two shores. Balance is not a destination you reach once and for all. It is a daily returning to yourself, to your natural rhythm of breath, to the awareness that doesn't judge. And then you realize you don't need to try to be at peace. You don't need to escape to rest. You just need to come back to the center where you're neither pulled nor pushed. And that alone is enough to begin a truly restful night. In the Buddha's teaching, the middle way is not a dry philosophical idea. It is a very practical path alive in every breath, every choice, every small reaction of daily life. The middle way is not about pleasing all sides, but about seeing clearly, so you are not dragged by one extreme or driven by the other. You can recognize the middle way in every genuine spiritual practice. In mindfulness, being alert without tension, present without control. In moral discipline, keeping precepts with reverence, neither rigidly extreme nor carelessly relaxed. In speech, honest without being harsh, gentle without being false. The middle way teaches that you don't always need to act quickly. Sometimes, stepping back is the wisest way to see the whole picture. And at other times, taking one brave step forward, even when uncomfortable, is what helps you overcome fear and grow. And often you just need to be still for a moment. Do nothing. Decide nothing. Just listen to what's really happening inside. In those quiet moments, wisdom begins to speak, not the worldly wisdom of logic and argument, but the wisdom of clear seeing, seeing what drives you, seeing whether clarity or confusion is leading the way. The middle way does not make you dull or indifferent. On the contrary, it allows you to feel more deeply because you are no longer ruled by emotion. You may still feel anger, sadness, or joy, but they move through you like waves without drowning you. When you live in the spirit of the middle way, you act not from external pressure or impulsive reaction, but from inner clarity. And that is the firmest foundation for a peaceful, mindful, and free life. And before you sleep, you can also practice the middle way. Don't force yourself to calm down instantly. Don't surrender to the flood of thoughts. Simply breathe in, breathe out, and let the mind return to its natural balance. From that place, you enter a rest that nourishes not only the body, but the heart, a sleep supported by wisdom, not by exhaustion. When you practice living with the middle way, you'll notice your mind becoming lighter. No more extremes in trying to please others. No more straining to achieve. No more punishing yourself with harsh expectations. From there, true freedom begins to unfold. Not the freedom to go anywhere or do anything, but the freedom from expectation itself, from the imagined ideal of who you think you must be. There is a kind of pressure that many of us carry without realizing it, because it wears a beautiful disguise called hope. People often say, "You must have hope or never lose hope," as a form of encouragement. But the truth is, not every kind of hope is healthy. There is a very thin line between hope and expectation. Hope is a gentle light, it opens. Expectation is a rigid frame, it tightens. Hope allows you to act without tying your happiness to the result. Expectation, on the other hand, always comes with conditions. This must happen exactly this way for me to be happy. And when reality shifts even slightly, you fall into anxiety, disappointment, even resentment toward yourself or others. In meditation, expectation is a subtle form of attachment. You may no longer cling to material things, but you still cling to an image in your mind, the person you want to become, the outcome you want to achieve, the words you wish to hear, or the perfect ending you hope life will give you. And when things don't match that inner script, you suffer not because life itself is cruel, but because you can't accept that it's different from what you imagined. Expectation is like a closed door that you yourself have locked. Then you sit there waiting for someone to knock. You wait for an apology to feel respected. You wait for success to feel worthy. You wait for others to change so you can be at peace. But life doesn't move according to personal desire. It moves according to conditions, karma, and impermanence. Once you see this clearly, you'll realize it isn't reality that hurts you. It's your imagined version of it. It isn't the other person who causes your pain. It's your inability to accept that they are not who you wanted them to be. It isn't failure itself that makes you uneasy. It's the belief that it must succeed. Modern psychology calls this cognitive control. The tendency to want the world to operate according to our will just to feel safe. But life doesn't obey our wishes. It follows natural law. It's like sleep. You can't force yourself to sleep by saying, "Sleep now," and expect to wake up refreshed. Sleep comes when you create the right conditions, without tension, without grasping, without expectation. The mind works the same way. Peace comes when you stop demanding to be peaceful. A practitioner doesn't strive to attain a better state. They simply see clearly what binds them and gently loosen it. And expectation is one of the most invisible chains of all quiet, yet deeply rooted. Before going to sleep, you can try this simple reflection. Place your hand on your chest and ask softly, "What am I waiting for from others today? What am I demanding life to give me back? Am I waiting for a perfect version of myself before I can rest?" Then exhale deeply and whisper, "I allow myself to be imperfect. I allow others to be different from what I expected. I allow life to be as it is." Letting go of expectations doesn't mean giving up dreams or losing motivation. It means you can still act, still aspire, but no longer confuse your worth with the outcome. You no longer measure love by how others respond. You no longer define yourself by success or failure. And in that, you find freedom. Freedom is not the absence of direction. It's the ability to stay balanced no matter how things unfold. That is wisdom. That is true peace. And tonight, if there's an expectation keeping you awake, try releasing it with your breath so sleep can come. Not because you've achieved something, but because you've allowed yourself not to need anything more. Many people can't sleep, not because it's noisy outside, but because the mind keeps whispering unfinished thoughts, unanswered questions. The noise doesn't come from traffic or phones. It comes from unnamed worries. What do I have to do tomorrow? Am I good enough? What if something goes wrong? Each question is like a small string wrapping around the mind, and the more you struggle, the tighter it gets. Your mind feels suffocated, not from lack of air, but from lack of space to simply be. In such moments, what you need is not a new plan or forced positivity. You need a single quiet moment of presence with yourself. Before sleeping, try this simple practice. Sit still. Close your eyes. Place one hand on your chest and one on your belly and whisper gently, "I don't need to know what tomorrow will bring. I only need to know that I am here and I am breathing." Inhale deeply. Exhale slowly. No need to push thoughts away. No need to force stillness. Just stay with the breath. Stay with yourself as you are. This is meditation in the dark, a gentle awakening within rest. No striving, no success to reach, just presence. And just like in daily life, you might notice something simple. Each time you wait for someone to change so you can feel peaceful, you hand over the key to your inner peace. Each time you tell yourself, "I'll be happy when this happens," you build a cage around your heart with unnecessary hope. And worst of all, each time you think, "I must be better, calmer, stronger, before I deserve to rest," You wound the most fragile part of yourself, the part that longs to be understood and allowed to soften. True freedom doesn't come when everything goes your way. It comes when you no longer need it to. Expectation. Even when dressed in beautiful words like motivation, dream, or growth, if it carries the weight of must succeed, must be perfect, must please others, then it is no longer light. It is a subtle chain. Psychology calls it idealized self-pressure. Buddhism calls it craving and attachment. And the antidote is beautifully simple. Just come back to a single breath, a single moment, a simple acceptance. When you notice yourself getting lost in expectation, pause. Inhale. I see that I am trying. Exhale. I allow myself to stop trying. You don't need to become anyone to rest well. You don't need to be perfect to be loved. You don't need to have all the answers to be at peace. Freedom doesn't need noise. It begins the moment you lay down expectation and simply breathe. The Buddha once said, "The root of suffering is craving the desire to grasp what we like and reject what we dislike." It sounds simple, yet if you look closely at your daily inner life, you'll see that expectation is the most refined form of craving. It doesn't always appear as greed. It wears the robe of ambition, standards, and plans for the future, and is often praised as a sign of progress. But beneath those layers, it is still the wish for life to unfold exactly as you imagine. You expect others to behave as you prefer. You expect yourself to always be good, right, in control. You expect sleep to come when you command it. And when it doesn't, disappointment feels not just emotional, but like a collapse of faith. A mind full of expectation cannot rest in mindfulness because it always leans toward the future, toward something that hasn't arrived yet. It depends on conditions outside your control, and in doing so, it loses inner freedom. Mindfulness is the way out. When you are awake, you no longer blindly follow the pull of desire. You begin to see clearly. All things are impermanent. You cannot hold on to a compliment, a pleasant moment, or an ideal image of yourself. All emotions are not self. They come and go, belonging to no one, requiring no control. All circumstances are interdependent. Nothing exists alone. Everything arises from countless causes and conditions. Thus, your task is not to control, but to flow with awareness, wisdom, and compassion. Understanding this doesn't make you passive or resigned. On the contrary, it makes your actions clearer, lighter, and more meaningful. You still work wholeheartedly, but not out of fear of failure. You still love, but without turning love into possession. You still give, but without waiting for reward. Expectation keeps the mind tense because it always demands. Mindfulness sets the mind free because it simply is. A mindful person is not indifferent. They simply no longer build happiness on unstable ground such as approval, control, or fleeting success. In daily life, you can practice this. When you feel upset because someone isn't as you wish, pause and ask, "What am I expecting?" When you feel anxious about something that hasn't happened yet, return to the breath and remind yourself, "I just need to be here. This moment is enough." When you feel disappointed, because the outcome is not what you hoped. Smile gently and say, I have walked my path. The rest is not in my hands. Mindfulness doesn't take away your dreams. It frees you from the craving that makes you forget the present. And that is true freedom, a freedom that doesn't come from achievement, but from a heart no longer conditioned by expectation. You can nurture this freedom through small daily acts. 1. When you start the day, don't place conditions on joy. Say, I will receive whatever comes as a lesson. 2. When you work, instead of thinking I must succeed, say I will give my best. 3. When you love, don't expect the same in return. Let love be a gift, not a debt. 4. When you fail, don't see it as the end. See it as part of your journey beyond your old limits. And at night, let go of every lingering what if. Expectation keeps your mind awake, always preparing for a future that hasn't come. But the present moment is the deepest rest, where there's no calculation, no comparison, only pure presence. In that stillness, you will taste a peace that nothing external can offer, a peace that doesn't depend on results, but blossoms through total acceptance. When you truly release expectation, you begin to see something deeper. Everything in life moves by causes and conditions, not by your wishes. What comes to you, pleasant or painful, is not random. It is the fruit of seeds you have planted in the past, and that is the natural continuation of this journey. Once the mind is free from expectation, you begin to see karma clearly unfolding in every moment. And instead of asking, why is this happening to me? You learn to ask, what have I sown? And what am I being invited to learn today? There are people who, after doing something good, quietly sigh, I've lived kindly, so why isn't life kind to me? And there are others who, when facing hardship, feel deeply wronged. I haven't done anything wrong. Why is this happening to me? These two questions may sound different, but they arise from the same place. The expectation of immediate return. A mind still impatient, still wishing for results to appear at the right time, in the right way, according to its desires. But according to the Buddha's teaching, karma is neither reward nor punishment. It is not a report card marked by some divine being. It is not something that happens because you're good or because you're bad. Karma is a reflection, a mirror that is impartial, patient, and precise. When you plant a seed in the ground, you don't expect a flower tomorrow. You know the soil needs time. The sun must shine. The rain must come. And even the seed itself must dissolve before new life can begin. So it is with karma. You do good not to see results right away, but because your heart needs goodness to stay cool, generous, and clear. The flower will bloom when its season arrives, perhaps in this lifetime, perhaps in a long chain of causes and conditions you cannot yet see. The Buddha once said, beings are the owners of their karma, the heirs of their karma. Karma is their womb, their kin, their refuge. No one else brings karma to you. No one can bear it for you. No one, no matter how powerful, can take it away. Karma is you. Every small choice, every word spoken in anger, every thought no one else sees, every moment you choose to forgive or refuse. It is each act, each habit, each way you move through suffering, or let it rule you. In modern psychology, this is called pattern recognition. Noticing the cycles that repeat. Each of us has our own karmic loops. You keep falling for the same type of person and suffer the same way. You get triggered by the same words, the same situations, and react as before. You repeat the same disappointments, not because life is cruel, but because you haven't seen it yet, and therefore haven't stopped, and so haven't changed. Karma isn't personal punishment, it's personal pattern. And only when you pause and observe yourself in each reaction, each thought, do you begin to step out of the loop. Instead of asking, "What did I do wrong to deserve this?" ask softly, "What am I being invited to see within myself?" Instead of wondering, "Why am I suffering when I've been kind?" Tell yourself, "I do good not to be rewarded now, but to keep the soil of my heart fertile." Some karma comes from past lives you can't remember. Some results arise from seeds planted long ago. You don't recognize them. So what you can do is simple. Live mindfully in the present. Plant what is right. Speak what is kind. Think what is clear. Then set aside expectation like a gardener covering the seed and walk on with trust. The result will come not when you want it, but when you are ready to receive it without pride, without resentment. Have you ever lain in bed, lights off, the world quiet, yet your mind loud? It keeps repeating a familiar loop. Something small someone said today. A memory you thought you'd forgotten. Old questions I should have. Why did they? What if that happens? You think you're just reflecting a little before sleep. But in truth, you're planting a new seed in the soil of your mind. And if that happens every night, you're not only losing sleep, you're creating a new karmic groove that will show up tomorrow as your mood, your habits, your way of seeing life. If the seed is worry, it will root quickly, because the soil of the late-night mind is soft, unguarded, and easy to influence. But if the seed is release, a soft breath, a non-judging awareness, you are nourishing the ground, not just for rest, but for a clearer tomorrow. Karma practice isn't mystical. Karma is habit, and every habit can change once you see it and choose differently. So before you fall asleep tonight, ask yourself, what did I plant in my mind today? Did it make me lighter or heavier? Can I set that seed down for now, just to rest? You may not be able to change an entire past. You may not dissolve deep karma overnight, but you can gently shift direction in the very first conscious breath you take before sleep. You don't need life to be fair, to be at peace. You just need to see cause and effect clearly, to know what to continue and what to stop. The moment you pause to breathe, you've already created new karma, not the karma of repetition, but the karma of any awareness. Then your mind is no longer a bag full of old stories, but a field freshly turned open to sunlight, ready to grow a new kind of flower. Karma isn't distant or mysterious. It's right here in the 3 gates. You open every day. Body karma, the actions you choose. Speech karma, the words you release whether by accident or intent. Mind karma, the thoughts that repeat inside even if never spoken. To transform karma isn't to wait for miracles. A true practitioner doesn't wait for the world to change. They change themselves. Through each action, each word, each thought, they soften and purify the inner soil so it can nourish wholesome seeds. And among all virtues that transform karma, one of the highest is the perfection of patience. Ksanti paramita. Patience is not silent endurance until you go numb. It's not gritting your teeth and suppressing anger. It is a deep inner strength, the courage to face without hatred, to endure without blind reaction. When someone recognizes karma ripening an unwanted situation, a painful word, an emotion rising, and does not react immediately, in that very moment they stop creating new karma. They interrupt a chain of suffering that is repeated for lifetimes. Non-reaction is not weakness, it is wisdom in motion. It is compassion for yourself, not wishing to plant more seeds of pain in an already tired field. In an old Zen story, someone asked a master, "What does it mean to transform karma?" The master smiled and replied softly, "To see karma clearly is to transform half of it. To not follow it is to transform the rest." You don't need to do anything grand to change karma. You simply need to stop feeding it. Instead of replying with harsh words, pause in silence. Instead of letting emotion lead, take a deep breath, exhale, and set the burden down. Instead of repeating habits that bring regret, choose differently, even just a little. That small step is already a great shift. Because the moment you pause, you are no longer being led by karma. You are the one consciously creating new, awakened karma. That is the true path of transformation, not through outer form, but through the essence of a mind no longer ruled by reaction. In daily life, transforming karma begins not with big gestures, but with small choices in ordinary moments. When someone hurts you, the first impulse is to retaliate. But if you take one pause and whisper inside, "I don't want to plant more suffering for either of us," you have broken a link in the old chain. When a situation keeps repeating, being misunderstood, rejected, hurt, instead of asking, "Why does this keep happening to me?" try asking, "What belief in me keeps drawing this pattern? What habit in me keeps recreating the same response?" These questions aren't for blame, but for clarity, and seeing clearly is the first step to liberation. When negative emotions arise, sadness, anger, guilt, you don't need to push them away. Just don't feed them with stories, fears, or imagined outcomes. Sit down. Place your hand on your belly. Exhale slowly. This isn't escape. It's our awakened action. Allowing emotion to pass without letting it control you. If you truly wish to transform karma, try this simple nightly practice. Before sleep, take 1 minute. Review your day as if watching a short film. Was there a moment I reacted automatically, repeating an old mistake? Was there a time my words weighed on someone's heart? Was there a moment I forgot to listen to myself? Don't judge, just see clearly. Then whisper inside tomorrow, I can write it differently. I can speak differently. See differently. Let go a little more. I don't need to be perfect, only a bit more aware each day. Karma is not as closed as you think. It opens each second through what you think, say, and do. The moment you realize you can choose again, you've already begun to change it. And the most beautiful truth is, no one can transform your karma for you, but no one can stop you from beginning. Just one mindful breath and you are already different. Now you can see, karma is not a sentence. It is a mirror and an invitation to correct, and to truly transform it, you must start at its source. The mind. The mind is where intention arises. The mind is where results are received. The mind is where karma ripens. So if you want to end harmful karma, nurture a clear mind. If you wish to plant wholesome karma, cultivate a steady heart. Some people still misunderstand. Patience, ksanti paramita, as weakness as submission, silence out of fear or enduring pain, because they have no other choice. But that is not the true meaning of patience, perfection, in Buddhism. Patience is not suppression. To suppress is to push emotions down, to hold anger in your chest while it still burns inside. True patience is seeing so clearly that you no longer need to react. It doesn't come from fear, it comes from understanding. Patience means seeing suffering without spreading it further. Seeing someone causing harm but not taking it as a reason to retaliate. Seeing anger arise but not letting it burn away all the goodness you've been cultivating. In Buddhism, the paramitas are virtues that help one cross from the shore of delusion to the shore of awakening. And the perfection of patience is not the strength of muscle, but the power of a mind that deeply understands the nature of suffering. A truly patient person is not someone who feels no pain, but someone who walks through pain without collapsing and without passing that pain to others. In meditation practice, patience itself is a method. When you sit in silence, you'll notice many things begin to happen. The body starts to ache. The mind grows restless. Old thoughts rise like waves. If you lack patience, you'll fidget, resist, judge, and give up. But if you have patience, you'll see clearly. These are just waves arising in the mind. No need to fight. No need to dive in. You simply sit, see, and breathe, and the wave passes on its own. In modern psychology, this is known as emotional tolerance, an inner capacity no one can train for you. A person with emotional tolerance can stay with discomfort without being controlled by it. They don't act on impulse. They don't need to run from negative feelings, nor do they need to pretend they're fine. They simply see, breathe, accept, and move through. Patience is not surrender. It's not passive nor a forced sense of being noble. It is a quiet form of courage to stay fully present with what is happening, even when it's unpleasant, without losing yourself. In daily life, you can practice patience in the smallest ways. When someone attacks you, instead of replying immediately, Take one deep breath and pause. When work becomes stuck, instead of quitting in frustration, stop, observe, and move again once the mind is calm. When a loved one doesn't understand you, hold back the reaction and wait for a better time to open your heart. Those brief moments of non-reaction are when you create distance between yourself and old karma. And in that space, a new version of you is born, steadier, wiser, and more compassionate toward yourself and others. You don't need to force yourself to become someone who never gets angry. You just need to know how to be angry without causing harm, to feel pain without spreading pain, to wait long enough to see clearly. And when clarity arises, you'll know when to act and when to stay still. Tonight, if something leaves you sad, tired, or hurt with no way to resolve it yet, I won't tell you to cheer up. I simply invite you to be patient, not to suppress, but to keep your heart from reacting further. Before sleep, instead of replaying, why did they do that? Did I deserve this? When will this end? Place your hand on your chest, close your eyes, and whisper, I know this is suffering, but I will not make it bigger. I am here, and I will walk through it in awareness. Then breathe, not to escape, but to give the mind a steady ground in the middle of the storm. It's the same in everyday life. A patient person knows how to pause one breath before replying, one beat before reacting. Not because they lack emotion, but because they know if they don't stop, they'll plant karma in ignorance. You can cultivate patience through small, concrete acts. When someone misunderstands you, instead of arguing right away, pause for a few breaths, then speak what's needed without resentment. When work slows down, instead of anger, ask yourself, have I done my part with full heart? When praise doesn't come when your effort isn't seen, keep doing good, knowing you're planting seeds. Patience is trust in karma, not letting momentary emotion destroy what takes time to grow. In many sutras, the Buddha praised patience as the most precious ornament of a practitioner, not because patience earns praise, but because it stops you from being pulled by old karma and prevents the creation of new. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha said, "He who endures harsh words with patience, like a great elephant unmoved in battle, is the truly courageous one." This kind of patience doesn't lie in words, but in a mind that no longer resists even when misunderstood, unrecognized, or unrewarded. A person with true patience, perfection, does not run from suffering. They stand still in the storm without being swept away, because they know suffering can only be transformed when no one helps it spread, and that is the lesson I hope you carry into life. You don't need to fight back to be strong, to refuse to cause more harm. That is real strength. You may meditate, read sutras, or listen to Dharma talks, but if when insulted, you still react instantly, your practice hasn't yet entered your blood, and you don't need to retreat to a mountain cave to cultivate patience. Daily life itself is the greatest monastery. When you're frustrated because your children don't listen, when you're exhausted from endless work, when you're disappointed that no one understands you, if in those very moments you can pause for one breath, if you can choose not to speak words that wound, if you can still act with kindness, then you are already practicing the perfection of patience. In the marketplace, in the kitchen, on the busy street. Some people still believe that mindfulness is a privilege, a lofty achievement reserved for monks meditating in mountain caves, for hermits in silent retreats, or for those who have attained the highest stages of concentration. They think that ordinary life with children, work, and endless responsibilities is too chaotic for awakening. But the truth is the opposite. The Buddha never said that enlightenment is only for those who leave the world behind. He never required anyone to become a monk to see the path. What he taught was simple. If you are fully present in this moment, then even in the middle of a crowded marketplace, you can still touch your own Buddha nature. Mindfulness does not require a sacred place. It begins the moment you know what you are doing. When you fold your clothes and truly see your hands folding. When you wash the dishes and your mind isn't wandering to a morning argument or an evening meeting. When you hug someone you love and nothing else exists but that embrace. That moment itself is meditation. No bells, no incense, just pure non-judgmental presence. In the Buddha's teaching, this is called sati. Right mindfulness, one of the eightfold path factors. Mindfulness isn't about forcing intense concentration. It's a gentle clarity, like light in a dark room. When there's light, you see clearly, no effort, no rejection. Mindfulness isn't doing something extra. It's returning to what you are already doing with a mind that no longer drifts away. And from that stillness, you begin to rediscover the quiet beauty in the smallest things. The scent of soap on your hands, the soft sound of a spoon touching a bowl, the cool breath of morning air. These have always been here, but you weren't. Modern psychology has confirmed something deeply similar. Just returning to the present moment for a few seconds every hour reduces activity in the brain's anxiety centers and strengthens the regions that regulate emotion, logic, and compassion. Those who are fully present act less impulsively. Those who practice mindfulness sleep deeper and recover faster. Most importantly, they make fewer mistakes, not because they're smarter, but because they see more clearly. You don't need hours of meditation to touch awareness. You just need a single moment of true presence. When typing, just type. When listening to your child, just listen. When drinking tea, just drink. And soon, the thin fog in your mind begins to lift. You don't need a quiet mountain to find peace. Wherever you stand, if your mind is still, you are already in a deep meditation. Each day gives you hundreds of chances to awaken. Mindfulness isn't a magical state that happens once in a lifetime. It's something you can return to at any time, even in the simplest acts. When you bow before the Buddha, it's not a ritual, but a moment to release the ego, to remember you are part of something greater than yourself. When you wake up, instead of reaching for your phone, sit up slowly. Feel your first breath of the day. Let your mind arrive before the world does. When brushing your teeth, instead of planning your morning, feel the cool water on your gums and tongue. even that can be meditation. When eating, put your screen down. Take 10 quiet minutes with no news, no noise, no scrolling. Eat with your senses, eyes, nose, hands, taste, and a silent gratitude. And especially before you sleep, that is also a moment for mindfulness. No deep meditation needed, no long practice. Just lie down, close your eyes, and soften your body. Ask quietly, what emotion am I carrying right now? What in my heart have I not yet released? You don't need to push feelings away. Just see them without judgment. Breathe in, knowing you are tired. Breathe out, allowing yourself to rest. If something feels heavy, leave it outside your sleep. Mindfulness doesn't mean you're happy, positive, or calm all the time. It means when you're sad, you know you're sad. When you're angry, you don't deny it or become it. You just see it clearly. When you're exhausted, you don't force yourself to keep going. You pause, breathe, and ask, what do I truly need right now? Mindfulness doesn't change circumstances immediately, but it changes how you move through them. You no longer drift. You no longer react automatically. You live with awareness, and that means you live truly. And perhaps that's what life most wants you to discover. Not a perfect life, but a heart that's fully present in every imperfect moment. In the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha taught a profound yet practical path, a way to inner freedom without leaving the world. He divided mindfulness into 4 foundations. 1. Mindfulness of the body. Knowing what the body is doing. Walking, know you are walking. Sitting, know you are sitting. 2. Mindfulness of feelings. Recognizing pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral sensations without clinging or resisting. 3. Mindfulness of mind. Observing whether the mind is restless or calm, tired or clear. 4. Mindfulness of phenomena. Seeing all mental and emotional states come and go without holding or identifying. It sounds abstract, but it can be practiced in daily life. No need for mountains, monasteries, or escape. Just begin to see what's truly happening inside you, and that itself is practice. When you care for your child and are fully present, you are practicing. When you wash dishes and feel the warm water, you are practicing. When you listen deeply to someone with your whole attention, you are practicing. And sometimes no one will know you are practicing. No meditation posture, no robes, beads, or scriptures. But inside every thought, every word, every reaction is being observed and quietly transformed. That is the deepest form of practice, awareness within the ordinary. Mindfulness turns simple moments into treasures beyond anything glittering outside. A gentle hand squeeze in a rushing crowd. A warm cup of tea on a cold morning. A slow rain standing still watching drops fall. A glance of understanding that needs no words. You don't need grand events to feel life's meaning. You just need to be fully present for what is already happening. And when you live that way, every moment becomes a fragment of awareness, light as a cloud, yet warm enough to brighten the whole day. So tonight, before sleep, you can gently practice the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Feel your body resting on the bed, mindfulness of body. Notice whether your mind is calm or worried. Mindfulness of mind. Observe sensations of tension or release. Mindfulness of feelings. Finally, see everything as a flowing stream. Nothing to hold. Nothing to keep mindfulness of phenomena. That alone is already the first step toward great awakening. We have walked a long journey together, from impermanence to letting go, from mindfulness to patience, from karma to awareness in daily life. And now, as you sit here listening, if you can feel your breath, if you know you are present, if you see clearly what is arising in your heart, then you are already awake. You don't need to go to a mountain or become a monk or wait for someday. Because in this very moment, if you are fully here, you've already touched the heart of the path. We often search for enlightenment as if it were something extraordinary. But sometimes, enlightenment is simply this: washing dishes without rushing, speaking kindly without expecting anything in return, breathing deeply and smiling because you know you are alive learning and still have the chance to practice. And that is where we pause today. Not an ending, just a quiet space for you to turn inward. Tonight before sleep, you don't need to understand anything more. Just soften a little. Breathe slower and whisper within, "I am here." And that is enough. You don't need to become anyone else. You don't need anything new. Just live fully with what is already here, with a mind that is clear, gentle, and unattached, and you are already walking the path of liberation. The Buddha did not grant miracles. He simply pointed the way, and you can walk it step by step with mindfulness, understanding, loving kindness, and patience. Every such step, though silent, creates wholesome karma. And in time, peace will bloom, not because you asked for it, but because your heart became clear enough to see that peace was never gone. So, if tonight, after these words, you feel a little lighter, a little more spacious, and can breathe a little deeper, then I trust the seed of awareness in you has already begun to sprout. Thank you for listening, for walking through each breath, each story, each teaching with me. Your presence is precious. If this journey has given you even a small light, please help it reach further by subscribing to Buddhism Seeds, liking the video so the algorithm helps share it, sending it to someone who needs it, and leaving a comment below, a thought, a reflection, or simply a hello, so we know you are here with us. Now, close your eyes. Let your hands rest. Allow yourself to rest in the arms of the present moment. May you have a deep, peaceful sleep where there is no striving, no worry, only breath and stillness.